Hey, super excited to spend some time with you, Sean, especially in my home market. I'm in from Miami. We're, 5, 6 miles from the capital, right here over the river. But just wanted to spend some time and chat.
Yeah, man, dude, appreciate you getting up with us, man. We ran it back a couple decades ago, right?
Yeah.
Here, where you were one of the top agents, and we always looked up to you guys. So just appreciate taking the time, and really excited about our new partnership with you and the leadership team at eXp.
So I'm super excited to congratulate you and Corey for jumping over to eXp. And a couple things I want to unpack is you guys had the choice of all the companies. What made you pick us over the other companies?
Yeah, man, it was a great question. It was honestly a lot of thought and prayer on it. To be honest with you, it was a big decision. We were with Keller Williams for over a decade. Great relationships there, great people. Learned a lot. I know you were there at one point too, just really seeing how the industry is changing. Wanting to align our business with people that were like-minded and have the same type of trajectory of where we want to go from not only making sure that our network and our database is served at the highest level, but also giving them a competitive advantage while also building the development side further and bigger. So I think that that's one of the things where we just saw a lot of alignment. With you being the tip of the spear was a big thing for us. We know you move quick, and being able to be, agile and nimble in a ever-changing dynamic market is a big piece, and to know that that's at the top was really refreshing to us. And really, man, with what you've created with the whole eXp exclusives, it's a huge value add for us and our clients. Obviously, we're in a very constrained supply environment. And that is basically an off-market MLS where we have access to it. We have bought deals through there that we've built. We have helped clients buy deals through there. So just a huge value add for us and our clients in the marketplace where nobody else really had that. That was one of the big things for us with different brokerages operating different ways and being franchises and all that type of stuff. They were really kind of isolated and siloed off of that. We felt like we were putting our clients at a disadvantage. So that was one of the main selling points. And kudos to you, man. Like that's awesome. And I see it continuously building. More and more homes are going on there, and I think it's going to rival the MLS or whatever the MLS is anymore nowadays.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing that I've always admired about your business is you guys went into the investment side early on, right? So both buy, fix, and flip, buy, tear down, and build,
Yep.
buy and hold. When did you decide that that was going to be an important piece of your business?
Yeah, man. Back in high school, I was always watching Flip This House, all that stuff. My dad worked with a builder in Howard County, Maryland. Having grown up in the Annandale Falls Church area, always just loved real estate, loved the construction side of it. Read a lot of books. Got my degree in economics, and really just always had a focus. So, Corey and I met at a big team back in the day, right after college in 2007 and 8, and we really helped them kind of get their flipping and going during the Great Recession. Nobody was buying. We're like, hey, man, we got to figure out a way to survive here. No one's buying traditionally. So we got some owners of the team there, and also some just clients that we had that we knew had capital. And we just ran jobs for them. Said, hey, look, if you can buy it for X and we put Y into it and you sell it for Z, we'll do everything for you. Kind of, get our masters in real estate investing with other people's money. It was awesome. So I feel like both of us, Corey and I, had that in us from an early age. That's what got us into real estate. We didn't necessarily get into sell homes to people. We wanted to do the investment side, but it just became a natural progression as we served more people and did a good job. Those referrals came. And the cool thing about, I think, being on the development side and the sales side, they're very complementary of one another. We're fortunate where we help about 200 families buy and sell in the DMV every year right now. So we see what the trends are and what the market is looking for and how it's responding. And then on the development side, we have 27 projects that are currently in production.
Wow.
Between us and our clients that we've advised as consultants. And just by being able to bring that inventory to market to create our own listings is a huge value add, because we're hitting the piece that is not being supplied to the market. And also from a standpoint of just our own team, it's a great lead generation. We're putting model homes out there in premier neighborhoods that, buyers and neighbors and potential sellers and everybody comes through. So it's a great marketing tool that we can use then to springboard and get additional business.
I mean, that's so different, right? Most agents I talk to across the country right now are in a constrained inventory environment, and believe it or not, just got back from Europe, and they're in a constrained inventory environment. So, one of the things that's top of mind for me is problems that you think are local are happening to everybody. low inventory, high rates, high competition. But you decided to build your own inventory. That's a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it comes with its own headaches. If it wasn't for just for men, there's a lot more white and gray hairs in here. But, it's one of those things that, again, there's always a piece of the market that there's an opportunity in. So, back when you were leading foreclosures, we bought a lot of your listings back then. And, that was a big segment of the market. Now it's, there's to be able to find stuff between that, in our market, 1 million and 2 million. So you got new construction over 2 million, starter homes under 1 million, which is crazy to think, finding that like nice middle ground to be able to appeal to the masses that don't need that huge house. So I think it's really just one of those segments where, it comes with its own issues, right? It's a cash flow type of business. It's a management and a sequential like logistics planning type of business. So you got to wear a lot of different hats, which is fun. It's certainly a challenge. But, I think it's one of those things that no matter what the market's doing, whether it's going up, down, or sideways, there is an opportunity in there as long as you can get the right property at the right price, right? You buy your profit, but you realize it when you sell.
That's well said. One of the things you just described is a term that I've taken from my construction experience into business, which is sequence and critical path, right? In construction, you call it critical path because you can't, put up the sticks until you pour the foundation. You can't wrap the house and then you put in the plumbing and then you put in the insulation, then you put in the drywall. And I think that is very analogous to building any business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the cool thing because it really does tend to transcend all businesses, right? It's that critical path method of, okay, we want to get here, but all of these steps have to happen, and some can happen, concurrently, some have to happen sequentially, and how you kind of put those pieces together and how you want to grow. I think that's the one thing that we love about real estate. There's just so many ways that you can monetize the business and also bring value to your customer and database. Like, we don't want to just be your agent or your advisor on how to build wealth in real estate. We want to be your one-stop shop for everything. And I think, to that point, with the whole NAR suit and all of that, and how are we going to protect buyer commissions, right? If the seller, if I'm unable to get the seller to pay this, like, why would you pay me X% to represent you? And I think that's really where you kind of got to come up with what is your competitive advantage and what's your differentiating value, right? And for us, having the investments and construction background is a huge piece. We're able to provide to our clients not only vendor and supplier discounts because we buy so much material in bulk. If they want to do, XYZ at their house afterwards, we can save people tens of thousands of dollars just strictly on materials, not even including, the contractors that we've vetted and have worked with. So it's kind of like we kind of look at ourselves as a very small scale in our local market here. It's like kind of like a Costco for real estate. We have everybody that can do everything and bring margin down, which then helps protect our value. But again, our clients are able to save money in the long haul. I was having a conversation with an agent on our team the other day, and they're like, why would somebody pay, X amount more for this agent compared to this agent if they're doing the same things? Are they doing the same thing, right? I mean, yeah, if you're opening a door and that's a kitchen, yeah, you're doing the same thing. You're writing a contract. Like, where is your value? And I think that's where, to your point, I think you've said it in some trainings too, you got to know your numbers, right?
100%.
We know that compared to the market here, post-COVID, like the Northern Virginia market, most homes sold for about 101% of value, right, of list price. Our buyers are at about 99.6%. So we're outperforming the market just on the buy side of 1.5% or more. So just knowing that and seeing that's one way we can save you because we know how to negotiate structured deals and actually identify value. And again, when you're a top producer, as you know, the networks matter. This agent Leo's writing on our house and, John Doe over here, never heard of, is writing on our house. We're going to work with Leo. We're going to want to work with Leo, right? So using that to our competitive advantage, and our clients are able to kind of just ride those coattails and reap the rewards of the network that we've built is really important. I think that our business, just real estate as a whole, is going to become much more relationship driven than it already has been. It already has been that, but I think it's going to become even more so prevalent with the new market that we're going into.
Yeah, I really liked what you touched on about making sure that you know your numbers, because I do say it obsessively, right? According to Bright MLS, the MLS you belong to, in the last 6 months, 55% of all homes had concessions, right? And so I'm encouraging agents to like actually know your personal numbers. Are you, equal to or greater than the market, right? Are you 60, 70%? Do you know what those concessions are? Because if you can intelligently say, hey, in the last 12 months, in the last 24 months, on average, I was able to get my customers 2%, 3%, 4% seller concessions. And oh, by the way, if the market's 101 and I'm 96 point whatever, you're 4.5, 5% better than the market.
Exactly.
And so when you ask for whatever your fee will end up being, it's a different conversation when you can say, hey, on average, I do this.
No, that's exactly right. And I think that and how you deliver that, and again, knowing your numbers though, not just kind of pulling something willy-nilly or having a talking point, but
Exactly.
truly being able to know your numbers and convey that, where, like you're talking to in layman's terms, right? Put it out in layman's terms, but actually there is a true like tangible value to that. You could say our average sales price around here is 800,000. So what is 4% on 800,000? That's $32,000. That adds up, and we're bickering here over 0.5% or 1%. So, I think that's where we're really going to have to, the market is going to, and I think that's why we're really excited about kind of partnering with you guys, because you guys have been so quick to adjust and coach. Like I remember like right before we joined, after the NAR, I think lawsuit was like filed, you got on, whether it was filed or settled, you got on, and that Monday you were like, hey guys, here's what we're doing. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know things are changing. And like, I was like, dude, this is what we need. Like, we need to hear straight from the top of the food chain of like, hey, here's what's going on. We know you have our best interest in heart. You were sitting in this chair, like you've done this. So, and you have a heart for real estate. And I think just seeing how you are able to navigate and the expediency at which this gets rolled out is like super impressive. And really, I think it's big for everybody. Like, that's why we're really excited about this. And it's going to be ever evolving, right? Like, things are going to continue to change, but we know that you guys are leading from the front. And, to your point, like one thing that you said that stuck with me, it's like, if it's legal and ethical, we're going to do it. And that, dude, I'm a black and white person, and I understand that there's gray, but like, if it's legal and ethical, we need to represent our people the best we possibly can and put them in a spot to succeed. And that is, that's our motto now. If it's legal and ethical, we're doing it. So what can we do to kind of shake things up and run? And when the market again pivots again, all right, we'll just change course a little bit and run that way. But just keep running.
Yeah. So I'm clearing a couple things that I keep saying, right? It's like, first of all, somewhere between 4 million on the low end and 7 million Americans will move.
Yep.
Right. That's what's happened over our functional real estate careers, right? You and I have seen, 08, 09 at 4 million. And then we saw 06 and 2021 at 7 million.
Yep.
And we're back to 4 million. But, a healthy normalized market's between 5 and 5.5 million transactions. What I firmly believe is buyers and sellers will continue to disproportionately choose to work with a licensed professional versus go out alone. And, I think on the buy side, there's a lot of conversation of, people may elect to not be represented and do it on their own. But I look at the seller data, right? And last year, there's a seller report that said like 36% of people attempted to go for sale by owner at the beginning, which is higher than I expected, but only 11% did. So like 2/3 of the sellers ultimately probably tried and said, this is really hard. I'm not getting the results I want. Let me hire a professional.
Yep.
So that's my guess as to what's going to happen with the buyers, where, they're going to try it and they're going to try to schedule 10, 15 different showings through open houses and a bunch of other methods. And then they're going to try to get a contract written.
Yep.
Whether they consult, a professional or a lawyer or whomever. I mean, there is, according to AR, there's 101 tasks done on the average buy side. And those tasks take 80 to 100 hours,
Yep.
right? That is a full-time endeavor.
Exactly.
And so, I'm confident that consumers will still pay for value,
Yep.
right? So a service has a value attached to it. I've been kind of cornered a bunch of times by the media in the last 2 months where they're like, well, what's that going to be? And I said, it'll be what the market says it is, right? So I very clearly say to people, look, in any industry, if a service is underpriced and there's not enough economic dollars to create a margin, it goes out of business. If it's overpriced, there's not enough demand and you go out of business.
Yeah.
Right? So the market will decide what those fees will be. And we've seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years you and I've been in the business, companies that came to undercut the current models that were not sustainable.
Yep.
And they went out of business. And we've seen models try to push the envelope on the other end, and they also don't make it, right? So I truly think over time, the new normal will emerge.
Yep.
And the other thing I say a lot is none of us know exactly how it's going to play out.
Correct.
Because it hasn't happened.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Just like we did during the Great Recession. We'll figure it out, right? Just like we did during COVID. We'll figure it out. Things happen. But the one thing I think I've kind of like just realized is we can't control what happens in life. All we can control is how we react. And mindset is really important. And it's like, okay, pivot. Let's figure it out. But like, there's always going to be lives to be made and people to be served in real estate. So
there's a really good stat I heard on a keynote, and I actually went and checked it the other day because I was thinking about this to include this in a conversation once. But it was something like across time and history, doesn't matter like which century or political, left or right, a good amount of heads of state, like people who ran countries, had one or both parents die before turning 15, like a disproportionate amount of them. And if you think about it, you're a dad, losing your parent when you're small is like the worst thing that can happen to you. Love, affection, protection, all that stuff.
yeah,
And those little people grew up to say, I survived the worst possible thing. I'm going to take over the world, and literally grew up to be Napoleon and Barack Obama and like all these heads of state, Queen Victoria. The flip side of that, there's another portion of the human population that have that same percentage. It's people in jail. So same horrible thing happens. And instead of saying, hey, I overcame this, I'm going to take over the world, it's like, woe is me.
yep,
And you react in literally the polar opposite way of how to navigate the world. And I find that fascinating because, I say a lot to people, life is 10% what happens
yep.
and 90% how you react to it.
Dude, couldn't agree more, man. And honestly, like I think it's one of those things where I try to, I try to keep an internal perspective on everything where it's like this is temporary. So like whatever happens, we should be able to be unshakable if you can just kind of keep your eye on that, where it's like we're here for a moment and let's make the most of it. And things are not going to go our way, right? We are going to have trouble in life. That is just a fact. But to your point, how you deal with it, and I think that's a very interesting stat. I didn't know that, but it makes sense because I think the mind is a very powerful tool, and how we decide, like emotions are one thing, but you can control your mind, so, and your mind can help control your emotions. So don't let your emotions pull you from a state of panic and fear and all of this, and it cripples you and paralyzes you, paralysis by analysis. It's like, all right, let's roll up our sleeves, let's do what we got to do. We know what happens, and if we do these activities, whatever that is, real estate or any other business, we do these activities, these are the results we're going to get, and just keep persevering and just pushing forward. I think that's a big piece of success in life, right? Not just business and making money, but just in life in general, like to have that mindset of we're going to charge on no matter what, is really something that I try to make that my fuel, because every day you wake up, you don't know what's coming your way, and you probably have a million arrows coming at you every day, bro. So
yeah, and again, I think about it a lot. It's like, listen, the time is finite. Like, do I get to spend it with the people I want to spend it with? Like, is it that serious, right? And so much of most humans' experience is not life or death.
Yep.
Right. There are truly folks who go through life or death experiences, but for the most part, it's like, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Exactly. My wife is a nurse practitioner in the NICU here at Inova. And when we got married, and I started dating her before we got married, and I would get stressed out about deals, or this house is too slow from getting built, or whatever. And she would come home and say, "Man, unfortunately, we lost a kid or two today." And it's like, it's the most, it's the busiest NICU pretty much on the East Coast, and it's just like, dude, like you are dealing with life and death. And that was just like it was a gut punch where you're like, what am I complaining about? Like, let's get serious here. It's not life and death, and whatever happens, we'll just keep moving forward, So I think perspective is key. And kind of going back to your last point too, or prior to that, when you were talking about, buyers being underrepresented, I do think there's going to be a messy middle here, right? Starting in August, going up to probably, who knows, next spring, summer, year. I don't know how long it's going to take to shake out, but as a listing agent that puts product out there, I know that if an unrepresented buyer comes and writes an offer, that they're going to be a pain to deal with. Much like probably a for sale by owner, they're trying to save money, even though they don't in the long run. And, you know, my job as a listing agent is going to be more because I'm going to have to try to facilitate them. I don't necessarily want to do dual agency, right? My goal would be, hey, we're controlling the listing and we're giving that person to someone on our team, and maybe it's a discounted rate for that one time, you know, offer or contract or something like that. But I just know that our work was going to be a lot more if I'm representing the seller and then all these unrepresented buyers are coming through. Like, you know, they don't know what they don't know. Yes, there are some savvy people out there that have bought homes. I'm not saying it can't be done, but the law of averages are the majority will not go smoothly and likely not get to the table. So I think that's one thing that, you know, we're just kind of being cognizant of. And, you know, to your point, to Gary Keller's point, to a lot of these, you know, leaders in real estate, like they've always preached listings are the business. Get listings, everything else will come. Other listings, other buyers, whatever. I think that that cannot be more true than now, especially with what we're going into. And you know, that's just something that we're truly really trying to double our efforts and double our focus again from, you know, from the development side, and then how do we use that stake in the ground to get more.
Yeah, I remember hearing Gary say that when I was super young, and I remember the sentence list to last, right? And then again, I like the law of numbers,
Yep.
right? The average buyer takes 80 to 100 hours. The average seller takes 30. And it's just purely because you're not driving around in the car,
Exactly.
right? So early on in my career, I said, okay, I can do more of that and control more of my time. I don't have to be, you know, in this traffic going around the Beltway.
Yep.
And so, yeah, no, I've told agents from the beginning, it's like, and I think there's a big portion of agents that never cross over, right? The buyer side typically is less intimidating when you get started, because you know a first-time homebuyer might not ask you all the questions that because every seller's at least done one transaction.
Something. Hey, yeah, I'll show you the couple houses. You don't have to sign anything. I mean, that's the entry point of real estate, right?
Exactly. So no, I'm super curious to see how it changes, and you know, as you said, I've been very loud and tactical, and you know, I have a saying which is treat your buyers like you treat your sellers.
Yep.
So, whatever process you had in place for sellers, you now have to have in place for buyers,
That on that side.
right? Meaning, you go towards an appointment. Like the concept of taking a listing without having a signed agreement is crazy.
Yep.
Right? Because not only you're not allowed to, you can't put a listing in the MLS without a signed listing agreement with a start date and expiration date and all the terms. That's basically what's going to happen on the buy side, right?
Totally.
You can't open a door or be compensated unless you have an agreement signed. And it's funny, I call it the messy middle as well. And somebody asked me the other day, it's like, well, it's going to be so much harder to become an agent. I said, well, 6 months from now, the new licensees won't actually know that there was a different way.
This is how you do business.
Right. So when you pass your test next spring, like this is how you represent buyers.
Yeah.
They won't actually know that there was a
They
different
don't
way.
have to be retrained.
No, because they're like, okay, this
Standard operating procedure.
is how you work with a buyer, which is exactly how you work with a seller, right? Like you sit down, you get this presentation, you negotiate price, terms, and everything else. So, you know, what I keep reminding agents is, at the end of the day, I firmly believe large number of people will want proper representation from an expert. And, you know, the market will set that price based on supply and demand of services and goods and everything else. But statistically, people want to be guided, right? And there's all the kind of cliche, you don't do your own taxes, you don't change your own oil unless you know what you're doing. And a certain percentage of the population knows how to do certain things. But for the most part, you know, you earn a living being an expert at something. You tend not to be an expert in all these other very specialized things.
Well, and for you too, like what do you see? This is something that we kind of just throw around too. Like obviously, I think there will be different models on the buy side, right? There could be an a la carte or fee for each thing, or hey, here's my fee, here's my fee, here's their fee, whatever that looks like. But from you as being somebody that's been in the industry for a long time and really just sees it all and has done it all, like if you were a buyer coming off the street and you had to sign something that said, hey, you might have to pay me this, what would be something that you would be looking for from a value add from me as an agent, your expert? Like what would be, because again, like to your point, there's those 80 to 100 things that everybody's going to do, but then above and beyond, like what would you
Yeah,
perceive as like true value?
so that's a really good question, right? And what I like to say is, okay, we don't have to invent it from scratch. That is what happens on the listing side.
Mm-hmm.
There are white glove full service, there are flat fee limited service, and somewhat of everything in between.
Yeah.
Right? Discount to whatever you think is the average. There is a variety. Like on the seller side, for the 23 years I've been in the business, there's been a lot of choice.
Yep.
Right? So I get asked that like by the media, and I said it'll probably mirror that, where there is a variety of price to value.
Yep.
Right? Because someone who will do X versus someone who's limited in like one time, it's a different,
Yeah.
delivery of services for the value charged. So I just moved recently from my home market to another one, and the value I found in a local realtor who actually knew the area was crazy. Like little things like, hey, you realize that traffic's atrocious that way versus this way, right? Like even if it's 2 miles, like that's 45 minutes versus 20 minutes. I'm like, I didn't know that, right? Like,
Thank you for the info.
it's super important.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this one little pocket you like is actually out. It's an unincorporated versus in the city, and like, there's a meaningful difference in taxes,
Yeah.
right? You have a Maryland license, like you cross a street, and there's a tax millage rate is dramatically different.
Yep.
So I think the super localized expert, and again, I know your business because we grew up doing the same things, but like when you can find someone a property that is off market or it's a tear down and you're going to build new with the description of materials you just said, like you're literally delivering potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity to somebody.
Yep.
Right? Like you can buy a house retail for $2 million, or you can help them acquire the lot for, 800, build the house for 700, and they have $400,000 or $500,000 in equity.
Exactly.
Like that's not replicatable.
No.
Like that's true value, right?
And truthfully, I couldn't do that in another market because I'm not an expert in those markets. I don't know. I don't have the contacts, I don't have the network, and I don't have the understanding of what true value is there. Where in our backyard, I feel like we know it as good as anybody.
So one thing I used to do, and sellers constantly, like I remember selling a house for a private equity gentleman who inherited the property, and I showed up to the listing appointment. I had an as-is cash offer. I said we can close by Friday. We could do a limited scope, like paint, carpet, and a couple things for like $20K, and this is your investment. This is your list price. And I said, or we could do like 100 grand. It'll take 6 months. I know the contractors.
Yep.
We'll scope it out, and we get to sell it for X. And it was like A, B, C, or D.
Mm-hmm.
And it really shifted the conversation from, okay, I'm interviewing to see what you can sell the house for. Because I think a lot of sellers go, it's like, hey, you said, 900, you said 9.25, you said 950. What's your fee? And you kind of figure it out. Versus I said, hey, look, the house is worth what the house is worth.
Mm-hmm.
You can sell it in this way, 10 days,
Yep.
no pain, 90 days, 6 months. But in each one of these scenarios, you might have to invest more dollars.
Yep.
And he picked the third one. And he literally said, hey, you actually netted me like $200,000 more with your expertise.
Yep.
He's like, I've always, looked at some of those fees and been like, I'm not sure they're worth it. He's like, I got a deal with you.
Yeah.
Right? Like I paid you this and you got me 5-8 times your fee.
And he can measure that. It's measurable. Exactly. And I think and to that point, kind of going to the buyer side, you were in the investment game, we're heavily in the development investment game, and a lot of those deals do trade hands off market, right? And we help our clients buy homes off market that aren't even investment deals, but just for their own home, right? We're probably about 25% of our 200 homes a year, we help source off market. And, in part of the industry, in that specific segment, it's always been a net sales price, right? We've always had our buyers pay our commission, right? Like that's part of it. If I can get you this house for this, my fee is this. Now we can either pad the price and it's coming from the seller to offset that, or it's just part of your closing costs. But either way, it's all about the net price. And I think that's what we're excited about with this, with the new rollout of where we're going. I know there's like a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there, but we've been operating in this space for a long time already. It's really nothing new. And we were having this conversation in our team meeting yesterday. It's like, at least the NVAR contract just got updated, and on the first page, right under seller subsidy, it's buyer broker commission paid by seller. So it's a line item as a net price on the front page of the contract. And I know we were at one of your trainings and you were talking about and coaching everybody through, like, hey, whatever you have in the buyer broker agreement, you cannot get more than that. You can only go down, like, if my fee is 3% and we can only negotiate 2.5% from the seller, and I don't want my buyer to bring that extra 0.5%, I can say, look, man, I'm going to do it for this, but you can't go up. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how people do that and how it works in function, because again, I'm of the mindset of set your fee, whatever it is, and try to get the seller to pay it. And then if you can't, you can decide if the deal's worth having. And, are we going to be qualifying agents? Hey, Leo, what's your seller at 123 Main Street willing to offer? Or is it just going to be part of the offer and package, and then we're going to negotiate it there just like we would negotiate the price? I know what the price is. I'm assuming it's 0. So let's go ahead and negotiate my fee, and our offer will basically, convey that.
So the intent, as I've read it, is for the seller to have active negotiation on every property, right? So if you've seen my trainings, I say, hey, treat it just like price, closing date, concessions, seller credit for the roof, right? It should be negotiated. And again, the more you can articulate your value proposition, hey, I'm going to render these services and that's the fee. And if the seller pays for it, great. But if the seller agrees to 0 and I render these services, I'm still owed that money. Are we on the same page, right? So it's fully transparent. And yeah, on the investor side, when one of my favorite scripts for building an investor database is to actively, see who's buying in a market, take them to coffee. And the script I always used was, hey, I see you're actively buying in this zip code, this county, this state. From time to time, I come across motivated sellers, and I'd like to know what your buy box is.
Yep.
Right? Because I firmly believe the best way to get the highest amount of money for a seller is to list it on the MLS and expose it to as many people as possible. With that said, just like that example where I said, hey, here's a cash offer, here's an, curb appeal versus fully renovated.
Yep.
There are a percentage of human beings who go, I want to close Friday. I don't want to deal with anything. I don't want to repair the property. I can't wait. There's fundamental distress of like, hey, I would love that, but I'm going to get foreclosed on in 30 days.
And this is solving my problem now, and I want peace of mind.
In 2 weeks, I need this.
Yep.
One of the things I've always said about the investor business is that cash is actually a different word for certainty, right? Like if I accept a financed offer that closes in 60 days, a lot can happen in 60 days versus non-contingent closes Friday in cash, that you're paying for certainty in exchange for that peace of mind. So no, I think the folks who have a strong value proposition and can articulate it will actually end up with more business now, right? Because, the one concept I've heard explained, it's like, hey, why should the agent who's been licensed for 6 weeks make the same amount as the agent who's been doing this for 20 years and has a breadth of value? And if you compare that to a lawyer and accountant, you may pay more for the senior partner versus a junior partner. So what I'm 100% clear about is the market will end up setting the price based on a bunch of service providers who are willing to provide a service and what the consumers are willing to pay for it.
Couldn't agree more, man. Definitely couldn't agree more. And what do you think? You have a much bigger global perspective than anybody I know in this space. What do you see as like being the biggest opportunity between now and 2030, say the next, 5 to 6 years? What do you think when we look back and we're sitting here like, okay, yes, we know we got through this, but where do you see like the biggest opportunity within the real estate?
So that's a good question, because like 20 years ago, I would have guessed that the business looked a lot different than it does today. And we saw in the last 10 years, $50 billion worth of investment capital come to substantially disintermediate, remove, change the business. And a lot of those companies pivoted back to working with the agent. And I truly believe it's that kind of last mile and hyper local knowledge, understanding, kind of, boots on the ground, very close to the actual physical real estate that come with the local expert. So the one thing I'll say is, in the 20 years I've been in the business, I have seen technology accelerate the process. So 20 years ago, it was a 3-page, white, yellow, pink, press hard, stick it in a fax machine. The fax would eat it half the time. But like, from taking a listing to getting it on the market and even exposing it, having listings, it would be 4 or 5 days, right? Just from the technology standpoint, where I had a call from my landline to that landline and schedule a showing. Versus now it's like, it goes digital, it populates to a million websites. The consumer can actually, on maybe your website, click a button and schedule a showing without even talking to you, right? Programmatically puts it into your calendar through like Showing Time or something. You could theoretically show that property within 60 minutes, whether it's in person or you walking around on FaceTime.
Yeah.
And then you can write that offer in .loop or SkySlope or SmartZip or Remind Docs, whatever, within like 20 minutes from your smartphone.
The efficiency is just
And
exponential.
then send it off for signature. And no exaggeration, from the time it's live on the MLS to you delivering an offer could be hours.
Yeah.
True story.
100%.
That didn't exist physically, technologically 20 years ago. So what I say to people all the time is, the agents who use technology will put the agents that don't use technology out of business. And I'm 100% sure that's going to continue to happen.
Yeah.
And the technology is like AI and, machine learning. And so the stuff you can now do that make you go faster, whether it's have the ability to respond in real time to inquiries on the internet. Like, we all have this crazy attention span.
Yeah.
So like, if you can leverage the emerging technology to be all things to all people, like respond in real time, like ManyChat, like have quicker responses to direct messages and all that crazy stuff, that starts being very, very different. And I think the folks who leverage that will outperform the folks that don't. But fundamentally, I believe consumers will choose an expert to hold their hand.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, man. This I don't know. I think we're just excited. Whenever like there's gray clouds coming in, it's like there's opportunity. And what are you going to do with it?
I had my biggest years when the Great Recession happened,
Yeah.
because there's so much turmoil and so many people got out of the business, and I was able to, figure out a system and process after, kind of overcoming my own personal headaches through it all. But then the opportunity presented itself.
What do you think about, a lot of agents nowadays and teams it's the ancillary businesses are important, right? And again, that's a value to our clients for being able to know, hey, when you go here, it's great service and there's savings. Do you think that that's important to really, from an agent that wants to grow their businesses or teams, to have like an actual one-stop shop? This is our...
Yeah, no, and as part of going from just a solo producer to becoming a team, I actually would tell agents who are brand new, it's like, hey, your preferred lender or your preferred title company or your preferred home inspector, that's actually part of your team, right? You're aligning yourselves with experts that will make sure that, back to that consumer experience, is awesome. Because the downside of that is, if you're not, and it's kind of haphazard, let's say you did an awesome job, but the lender dropped the ball and they didn't get the house and lost their EMD. Who are they going to be mad at? Right? Like, that's a pretty big fail. So yeah, 100%. But hey, I really appreciate the time today, Sean. This was awesome. I'm super excited to have you on board, and I look forward to what you're going to build here.
Absolutely, bro, man. We appreciate you and everything you're doing to lead the charge.
Thanks.